My grandma always bought me clothes that made me look like a clown. Kids grow fast, so wear them with room to spare, she'd say, but the sizes weren't just big. They were comically huge. I was 12 when I first realized how much I dreaded the annual shopping trips with my grandma. Every summer, like clockwork, she'd show up at our little suburban house in Ohio, her old station wagon packed with bags from discount stores. Her eyes would sparkle with pride as she handed me these massive plastic bags filled with clothes she'd picked out. I'd force a smile, knowing what was coming, another year of drowning in fabric. The pants were so wide I could have fit my entire body down one leg, and the sleeves of the shirts hung past my knees. I'd stand there in our cramped living room, holding up a pair of jeans that looked like they belonged to a linebacker, while she beamed and said I'd grow into them. I never did. School was the worst part. Middle school kids are brutal, and showing up in a t-shirt that could double as a tent didn't help. The other kids called me Scarecrow because my clothes flapped around me like I was stuffed with straw. I'd spend my mornings in the bathroom rolling up pant legs 4 times just to walk without tripping. My backpack straps would slide off because the shoulder seams of my shirt sat halfway down my arms. I tried to laugh it off, but inside I was mortified. I wanted to blend in, to wear the slim-fit jeans and graphic tees the other girls had, but instead, I was a walking wardrobe malfunction. I started hiding in the back of classrooms, avoiding group photos, and dreading gym class where the oversized gym shorts made me look like I was wearing a parachute. At home, I'd beg my mom to let me pick my own clothes, but she'd just sigh and say Grandma meant well. Money was tight, and my parents couldn't afford to buy me a whole new wardrobe when Grandma was already helping. I didn't want to seem ungrateful, so I kept quiet, but every time I opened my closet, I felt a pang of resentment. Those clothes weren't just big, they made me feel small, like I was invisible under all that fabric. By the time I hit 14, I started getting creative. I'd sneak safety pins from my mom's sewing kit to cinch the waists of my pants, turning them into weird, lumpy versions of skinny jeans. I'd knot the sides of my t-shirts to make them less baggy, but the extra fabric still bunched up awkwardly. One day, I got bold and cut the sleeves off a flannel shirt to make it a vest. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like a small rebellion. Grandma noticed, though, when she came over for Thanksgiving. She didn't say anything, but her pursed lips and raised eyebrow told me she wasn't thrilled. I didn't care. For the first time, I felt like I had some control. That same year, something shifted. I was at a thrift store with my best friend, rummaging through racks for anything that fit me. I found this vintage denim jacket, faded and soft, in my actual size. It was $5 and I had just enough birthday cash to buy it. When I slipped it on, I felt like me for the first time in years. Not Scarecrow, not Grandma's oversized project, just me. I wore the jacket every day, even when it got too warm. It was like armor, a shield against the baggy clothes I still had to wear underneath. But the real turning point came in high school. I was 16 and Grandma's shopping sprees hadn't slowed down. She'd upgraded to online orders, which meant boxes of oversized sweaters and khakis showed up at our doorstep like unwanted guests. I'd had enough. One night, I stayed up late, staring at my closet, and decided I was done. I pulled every single piece of Grandma's clothing out and piled it on my bed. It was a mountain of polyester and regret. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew I couldn't keep living like this. The next morning, I dragged the pile to the garage and started sorting. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I figured some of it could be salvaged. I found a pair of cargo pants so big I could have camped in them, but the fabric was sturdy. On a whim, I grabbed a pair of scissors and started cutting. I turned the legs into shorts, frayed the edges, and used some leftover fabric to make a belt. It wasn't high fashion, but it was mine. I kept going, experimenting with other pieces, turning a massive button-up into a crop top, stitching patches from old t-shirts onto a jacket. It was messy, and half the time I had no idea what I was doing, but it felt good. For the first time, I was taking her gifts and making them my own. School started to change after that. The kids who used to call me Scarecrow started noticing my DIY outfits. Some of them even asked where I got my stuff, and I'd just shrug and say, made it. I wasn't popular by any stretch, but I wasn't invisible anymore. I started carrying a little sewing kit in my backpack, tweaking my clothes between classes. It became my thing, this weird mix of rebellion and creativity. I'd spend hours on my bedroom floor, surrounded by fabric scraps, turning Grandma's oversized disasters into something I could wear with pride. Update 1, the garage sale epiphany. By my junior year, I'd gotten pretty good at transforming Grandma's clothes. My closet was still full of her purchases, but now it was a mix of my creations and a few thrifted pieces I'd saved up for. I started posting photos of my outfits on social media, not expecting much, but a few people at school followed me and then their friends did too. I wasn't trying to be an influencer or anything, just sharing what I was making. But then one of my posts, a pair of patchwork jeans I'd spent a whole weekend on, got shared by a local boutique's account. They messaged me asking if I'd sell them. I was floored. Sell them? My weird, cut-up grandma clothes? I didn't know what to do, so I asked my mom. She was skeptical but said I should give it a shot. I sold the jeans for $20, which felt like a fortune. That same week, I overheard my parents talking about how tight things were financially. My dad's hours had been cut and my mom was picking up extra shifts. I realized grandma's clothes, as much as I hated them, were her way of helping us out. It hit me hard. I'd been so focused on how embarrassed I felt that I hadn't thought about why she was doing it. She wasn't trying to make me a laughingstock, she was trying to save my parents money. That spring, I decided to do something big. I organized a garage sale with all the clothes I hadn't reworked yet. I spent weeks prepping, turning some of the pieces into new designs and leaving others as is for cheap. I put up flyers around the neighborhood and posted about it online. I didn't expect much, but on the day of the sale, people actually showed up. Neighbors, kids from school, even some strangers who'd seen my posts. I sold a bunch of my reworked stuff, skirts, bags, even a quilt I'd made from scraps. By the end of the day, I'd made almost $300. It wasn't life-changing, but it was enough to help with groceries for a couple of months. For the first time, I felt like I was contributing, not just complaining. Update 2, the family secret. The garage sale changed things at home. My parents were proud and even Grandma seemed impressed, though she didn't say much. I thought that was the end of it, but a few weeks later, something unexpected happened. I was digging through the last box of Grandma's clothes, looking for anything worth salvaging, when I found a small photo album tucked inside a sweater sleeve. It was old, the pages yellowed, with pictures of a young woman in oversized clothes, dresses too big for her frame, coats that swallowed her shoulders. It took me a second to realize it was Grandma. I brought the album to her the next time she visited. She got quiet, her hands shaking as she flipped through the pages. She didn't say much, but I pieced it together from what she didn't say. She'd grown up poor, hand-me-downs were all she had, and they were always too big because they came from older cousins or neighbors. She'd learned to make do, to wear things with room to grow. It wasn't just about saving money for her, it was about making sure I never felt the way she did, like she didn't deserve clothes that fit. I'd spent years resenting her, but in that moment I saw her differently. She wasn't trying to embarrass me. She was trying to protect me. I didn't know how to process it. Part of me wanted to hug her, but part of me was still mad about all those years of feeling like a joke. I didn't say anything, just put the album back in her hands and went to my room. That night, I cried for the first time in years, not because I was sad, but because I didn't know what to feel. I was still figuring out how to reconcile the grandma I'd built up in my head with the one I was starting to understand. Update 3, the big move. By my senior year, things were different. My DIY clothes had become a full-blown hobby and I'd started selling more pieces online. It wasn't a business or anything, just enough to cover new fabric and maybe a coffee now and then. I was accepted to a college in Chicago, a big deal for our family since no one had gone away to school before. But the closer it got to move-in day, the more anxious I felt. Chicago was a big city and I'd be leaving behind my little bedroom workshop, my thrift store haunts, everything that had made me feel like me. Grandma came over a week before I left. She didn't bring any clothes this time, which was a first. Instead, she handed me a small box. Inside was a sewing machine, not a fancy one, but sturdy, used, probably from one of her discount store hunts. I didn't know what to say. It was the first gift from her that felt like it was actually for me, not some future version of me she thought I'd grow into. I hugged her, and for once, it didn't feel forced. College was a whirlwind. I was surrounded by people who seemed so much cooler, so much more put together than me. But I kept sewing, turning old thrift store finds into outfits that made me feel confident. My dorm room was a mess of fabric scraps and thread, but I didn't care. I started a small campus club for people who liked making stuff, clothes, art, whatever. It wasn't huge, but it was mine, and it reminded me of those late nights in my bedroom turning Grandma's clothes into something new. Finale, the full circle. A year into college, I got a call from my mom. Grandma wasn't doing well. She'd been sick for a while, but I didn't know how bad it was. I took a bus back home that weekend, my stomach in knots the whole way. When I saw her, she looked smaller than I remembered, like the oversized clothes she'd always bought me had finally swallowed her too. I spent the weekend with her, mostly just sitting quietly, helping her sort through old photos. On my last day there, I brought out one of my latest projects, a jacket I'd made from pieces of her old clothes mixed with some denim I'd found at a thrift store. I showed her how I'd used her giant flannel shirt for the lining, how I'd turned a pair of her khakis into pockets. She didn't say much, but her eyes lit up and she ran her fingers over the stitches like they were something precious. I realized then that I'd been carrying her with me all along, not just in the clothes, but in the way I'd learned to make something out of nothing. She passed a few months later. I went home for the funeral, and afterward I found another box of her clothes in the garage. I thought I'd be angry seeing all that oversized fabric again, but instead I felt a strange kind of peace. I took the box back to Chicago and started working. This time I wasn't cutting or pinning to hide the size, I was creating something new, something that felt like both of us. I made a quilt big enough to cover my dorm bed, pieced together from her clothes and mine. Every stitch felt like a conversation we never had, a way to say thank you and I'm sorry and I love you all at once. Now, when I wrap that quilt around me on cold Chicago nights, I don't feel like Scarecrow anymore. I feel like her granddaughter, carrying a piece of her with me not because I have to, but because I want to.